So why don't you introduce yourself to me, tell me who you are and your position, what you do.
Sure. My name is Brent McCann, and I work at Washington State University. I work with the Animal Science Department. I run their beef cattle for them to kind of keep them in a holding pattern for research and teaching and training. We run a couple hundred head of mama cows, and of those cows, roughly a third to 40% are Wagyu influence type cattle. So most of my time is spent in just making sure the cattle are doing well for the university, and then just providing all opportunities I can to faculty and students to get purpose out of them. And then in the meantime, of course, there's production, so I do a fair amount of marketing and hopefully improvement of genetics and things like that. Um, and and so yeah, I manage cattle for a university for the state of Washington, and so that's kind of a unique place to be in terms of what I'm accustomed to.
Right, and that's interesting because you're from Montana originally,
Right.
and so tell me a little bit about what brought you here and kind of your road to ending up in the Pullman.
Finding myself in Pullman, sure. Yeah, it's a pretty interesting story in my opinion. Um, it just starts way back. I grew up in ranching on a family ranch up in north central Montana near the Canadian line, and we ran just Angus and Hereford type genetics. Wagyu, of course, was not even a thought, and that would have been in the 70s and 80s. I was born in 1972, so it'd be the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I was at my home place where I grew up with a large family, and as fate would have it, there really wasn't in the cards for me to stay there and make a life there with the ranch I grew up in. And so at some point, I realized how much I appreciated ranching and beef cattle and that, and I knew I wanted to make my life in it. And so then I had to start looking around, figuring out how can I do that. And so real simple, you become a cowboy. And so I was able to find a job in nearby mountains, cowboying for a big Angus, commercial Angus outfit. I did that, and I was going to school at the same time. I was going to University of Montana, and I have a bachelor's in liberal studies and a master's in journalism. But I enjoyed the cowboying the most, and so one opportunity led to the next. I found myself cowboying at another ranch on the Rocky Mountain front in Montana, and then at some point I decided that I needed to find a way not to get banged up so much. So I got more education. So I went to South Texas to it's called the King Ranch Institute for Ranch Management, and I got a master's degree there in ranch management. After that, I came back to Montana. I went to work at a ranch south of Cascade, Montana, called Sieben Livestock, and that would be where I met Jerry Reeves, and that's kind of where my relationship with Jerry started. Is I was foreman for that ranch. Just to give you some sense, it was pretty remote. It's a pretty remote ranch. It's 70,000 acres. They're running, I think at the time we were running 1,500 mama cows and a band of purebred Targhee sheep. And the way Jerry Reeves fit into that was he would lease them the bulls, his Wagyu bulls, to put on their commercial Angus type heifers. And so that's the beginning of the relationship I had with Jerry Reeves, was at Sieben Livestock. So yeah, it would have been 2010 when I first started working with Jerry, and then I was there for 4 years at Sieben Livestock, and then I have children, and they were just getting up to school age, and I needed a different gig, and so I talked to Jerry one winter when I needed more bulls, and I told him, I said, I can't stick around Sieben because I want to get my kids in school. And so he said, yeah, that would be, there's an opportunity at Washington State University that they need a new beef cattle manager there. And so that's, Jerry was able to visit with faculty here, and then we kind of talked it over, and then it turns out to be a pretty good fit for me here at Washington State University.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah.
and that would have happened in 2014 is when I came to Washington State University, yeah.
Do you think it makes it difficult, or is it more beneficial to the animals that are out here as far as how they're grown, what type of land they live in, compared to like Montana where you're at? Is this a good place to grow, Wagyu?
The Wagyu cattle are actually highly adaptable. I have people that run them successfully in northern Alberta. I mean, they run them successfully in South Texas. They're a breed that I think sometimes assumptions are made that they're fragile, and I wouldn't use that word to describe them. As long as you're a good manager of livestock and stuff, the Wagyu cattle fit in a lot of places. They fit in Montana. They fit here in eastern Washington as well. It's simply knowing what they need and how to run them properly. But in terms of climate and stuff like that, I don't have a lot of concerns for Wagyu cattle. If people tell me they're going to run them wherever, they'll thrive. Given that you're going to, help them be, with the basic needs, and that's provide nutrition, a good, don't keep them in a swamp, that just basic stuff like that, run them like normal cows, and they're going to do great. At Sieben Livestock, where I was at in Montana, the headquarters was at 5,000 feet, and we would run, we run those cows from 4,000 feet to 6,500 feet, and the cattle did great. We didn't pamper those cattle. I don't pamper cattle as a rule. I treat them right, but the Wagyus do well as long as you just treat them like a cow. And there's little things I run into when I'm talking with people that sometimes I surprise them. Somebody will want to tell me, well, Wagyus don't graze well. They need special treatment to be able to go out, and Wagyus are great at grazing. They're phenomenal. In fact, when I run a mixed herd for the WSU Animal Science Department, and I'll run Angus cattle right next to Wagyu cattle, next to crossbred cattle, and whenever I see a cow that's really earning her miles out there getting after the forage, if I take my field glasses and look, 9 times out of 10 it's a Wagyu cow. They're super great about that. Wagyu cattle are extremely good at traveling, which is that's important too if you're needing to move cattle here and there and doing things like that. In fact, some people might be a little uncomfortable how much they like to travel, but if you know what to expect from them, they're great. They're a great breed to have. And so, to answer your question, whether you're in Montana, Wyoming, pick all the western states, go up into Canada, you'll be fine. Wagyu cattle do great.
Where do you kind of see the future of Wagyu going in America, and as far as consumers go, do you think there's going to be, like Charlie said, an uptick in people looking for it?
Sure. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball, but this is what my gut tells me. I think that as we continue to coexist, all the different cultures, all the different countries, economies, what have you, we have these competing methods of getting humans protein, right? And so, like right now, there's the plant-based protein, and then you got chicken and pork, and you got these other things. And I'm not gonna try to convince anybody that they have to eat beef. Beef sells itself, right? It's like I think the beef's biggest threat right now is people's misunderstanding of how its role in the environment. And once we get people to understand we're not the cause of global warming, and they quit getting uncomfortable with that idea, we're always going to have our market share in the protein world, but as economies grow and population grows or shrinks or whatever it is, I really believe that quality is going to win out over quantity, and so I believe that's where the Wagyu has got a real solid future, is that anybody who's had a piece of Wagyu knows that it's super good. And so as we move forward and we have these competing proteins, in any sort of marketplace, right now I would be worried if I was in a breed of cattle that was known more for quantity than quality, right? Because the consumers are continue to be more and more discerning as they go forward. They're going to know what a good piece of beef tastes like. Once they have it, they're not going to want to go back. Once you have Wagyu, it's really hard to go back to just another type of regular piece of beef, right? And so every time somebody sits down and has a piece of Wagyu, you're going to win them over. If there's some sort of I'm not saying I'm trying to change somebody from eating chicken to eating beef or whatever, but once somebody eats beef and then they eat Wagyu, it's like, I'm going to go Wagyu again. Let's, if they have the option, let me have Wagyu again. It was a good experience. And so, yeah, I think the future of Wagyu is real strong. So it's basically because there's a limit on market share out there. There's always going to be, and I really think that the quality is going to create the markets for the Wagyu cattle. The quality that they deliver day in and day out, and they cross with other cattle well. They cross with other breeds well. Right now, I think they're still in the cattle industry at large. There's a little skepticism by the traditional cattle ranchers. The guys that are known to be comfortable with British type breeds like the Angus, the Hereford, and that type of the Continental type guys. But every time somebody really wants to impress, well, they bring Wagyu on the table, right? And so every time one of these cattlemen have a chance to eat the Wagyu, they'll understand that no, this is where the industry's going. It's got to go there. Beef has always been an exceptional eating experience, and we just got to keep doubling down on that as we go forward, and that's what Wagyu does for you.
As we're kind of transitioning into the future, you're working at WSU. How do you work with Jerry now in today's time? Do you come and help out, or how do you and Jerry work together? And maybe you don't anymore, but
no, I look to Jerry for just knowledge. I lean on him a lot for that. He's very generous with his genetics to the university. So I know his cattle pretty well. I know what kind of Wagyus he's capable of offering people, and so really it's just a friendship. I don't come out and help Jerry. I'd be happy to, but he seems to get it done without me having to show up. So no, it's just I look to Jerry for knowledge. I'll get semen from him occasionally to AI cows with, and then. I just always I trust Jerry and his ability to understand where Wagyu fit in the industry and how we need to make them go in the North American continent for the most part. I know he's got he's world traveled, so he has insight to all sorts of places. But mostly I just look to Jerry for help in understanding how to make the Wagyus work in the region we're in and the markets that we have.
Yeah.
So,
what a resource, right?
Oh yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, to have him nearby. He's been really generous, and I just trust him. And he's just a wealth of knowledge. Like you said, he's nearby, and so that's pretty important. And the important thing to mention is that he's that way with everybody, I think. So, I just happen to be the guy that was able to come in and help with the university, and he's the Wagyu expert nearby. And so it wasn't, and I think he's got that way about him. And he knows the cattle from a real practical standpoint, where I think that could be a little unusual. There's a lot of people out there who might be in the Wagyu business for whatever reasons, but they really don't know the cattle from like birth to finish. And so that's a really important thing to make note of when you describe what these guys have going on. And also I understand a basic understanding of their operation, and I agree with how they're running their cows, and that's important for me to know that the genetics they have are going to fit in with the types of cattle that I like to run for the university. I don't have my own set of cows, and so the cows the university has are my cows, and so I run them like they're my cows, and so I seek out people like the Reeves and other producers out there that have I try to witness what they're doing, understand what they're doing, so I know that when I get genetics from them, I'm not going to be disappointed. Or if the disappointment happens, it was a surprise disappointment, and that doesn't usually happen. Not with just the Wagyus, but with the Angus we run or anything like that. And so I try to do my homework. I try to get cattle that I feel are going to fit our resources, and I think that's might have been what you're getting at with that earlier question is, how are the cattle? Yeah, how are the cattle in terms of different types of resources? And that's on the producer to understand their resources and how the cattle will fit to them. So,
Brent, I wanted to ask you about your time with Sieben, and obviously they made the choice to get into using Wagyu bulls on their first-time heifers. Can you talk a little bit more about the decision to do that and why that was a benefit to big ranches like the one you worked on?
sure. That decision was made before I got there. So when I took the job as foreman, they'd been running their Wagyu, the Wagyu bulls on their heifers for I'm not sure the exact amount of years, but it was a system that was in place that when I walked in, I tweaked on it, and then. But the idea there is that's an important concept. I understand what you're getting at, and that's the fact that the Wagyus are known for their lighter birth weights, and so when you breed a heifer to them, those heifers can have little or no dystocia, which is calving problems on their first calf, and it gives that heifer a good first time experience, which is great. And people have done this with other breeds as well. Longhorns was real common in the 80s. People would breed their heifers with but at the end of the day, you had a calf that nobody wanted when you went to market them. Well, the Wagyu was the opposite of that. You had a calving ease scenario for your heifer, but then at the end of the day, you had a premium calf. And so that's when I understood how that worked, it really resonated with me. And I think if more cattlemen understood that, there'd be even more F1 crosses going on. But I wouldn't say I went in there with a closed mind. I went in there wanting to make the ranch run, and that was an important part of it. But I'll never forget when the first time I went out to gather the bulls that we had at the ranch. It was a bull battery of like 80, 90 head or something. And we went up this mountain, and we collected them up. We brought them down. Of course, the Wagyu bulls were in the lead, and probably 20, 30 of them, I can't remember. But anyhow, my gut reaction to seeing that was, well, if we just cull these first 20, 30, the ranch is going to become a better place, because they looked odd. They weren't. But I knew we weren't going to do that. But that was what the cowboy in me said. It's like they don't look like the Angus bulls that I'm used to, and so I'll never forget that. When they came to the gate, they were the first one at the gate, and it's like, well, if I just open the gate, let these out, ship them out of here, and then we clean this place up, we get back to business, right? But that's not the case at all. Those bulls were very valuable. And what they offered the ranch was extraordinary. And then at the end of the season, so what we do there is we run those cattle. Those calves would be born. We'd run them into yearlings, and we sell them as yearlings, usually. And you could do the math. I could load out a truck heavy with Angus type steers, and price per head on those big Angus steers, the Wagyu steers would match them. And they would, if you follow what I'm saying, it's like they were a lighter animal, they grew slower, but when the truck was leaving the ranch, we got the same money for the big steers as we did the Wagyu steers, if not more. And that's really important because those steers would have consumed less, they calved easier. We didn't have dystocia on that ranch, but those were our heifers. And so we had no dystocia in our heifers, and we had a smaller steer for sure as a yearling, but they were going to grow into premium beef. And so when the trucks left, we were making money across the board on all those cattle equally. It wasn't like we were taking a hit on any one breed or another. So that was a nice thing to know.
I will ask you, what is your favorite cut of Wagyu beef to eat?
You know, I'm pretty simple that way. I just like a ribeye, and I just with the Wagyus, I tend to eat a little smaller ribeye and share it with more people. I think there's going to be there's going to be a realization with the Wagyu breed that and historically, like you say, you feed a cow to finish, and you have the big cuts. You have the New Yorks, you have the ribeyes, you have the what have you, the tenderloins, and then. But I think with the Wagyu breed, I think what people are going to realize is there's a lot more delicious cuts to be had due to the breed itself. You're not going to take one of these, I don't need to name them, but one of these other popular breeds and hope that, you cut into a certain part of the, it's burger material. You don't have to get creative with it because it's always going to be ground beef, right? That's what they're going to make with it. It just doesn't taste well otherwise. But with the Wagyus, if you feed them right and you got the right genetics, there's a lot of parts of that cow that end up being white tablecloth type experiences. And I love a good burger, but really, there's parts of a Wagyu cow that only due to lack of imagination is it ground up. It could be a really good cut of meat to share with someone that would really impress, but because we're not that sophisticated, say, I'm talking about myself, I need to learn how to make that into that cut and know how to cook it to impress, or even just not even impress, but just to enjoy. And so I think that's got to be almost that's just got to happen from one kitchen to the next, to understand that, yeah, I got, what cut is that? I've never heard of that cut before. And it's like, yeah, it's really, it's really good. And you can do it with a Wagyu. You might not be able to get away with it with another type of breed because it just isn't going to have the tenderness or the flavor. But that's a big deal that I think is yet to be completely appreciated by a larger audience. There's people in the Wagyu world that get it, but I would say that as the Wagyus continue to have a role in the industry, more and more of these lesser known cuts and lesser known ways to cook are going to become more common. So,
do you work with students, and do you mentor them in to get into this world? You yourself had a different journey and ended up here, and so I'm sure there's people that, students that you work with that are, interested in jumping into this industry. Now, how do you work with them?
Yeah. Well, I work closely with just a handful every year. Like, I've been with the university 8 years now, and I probably have 20 to 30 that I've really could say I helped develop and I helped mentor. The other 20 to 30 kind of came around and did what we were agreed they'd do, and then they moved on. But when it comes to the students, what I always tell them is, you don't have to convince me you're going to be in the beef industry forever. Just be in it with me for now, because I need that attention. I need that focus on what I'm doing, and I really don't try to get too much in their business. Like, if they tell me they want to know more about reproduction, I'll create opportunity for them to learn more about reproduction. If it's nutrition, I'll try to create opportunity for them to learn nutrition. And like I was saying before, the university is unique in that they have Angus, they have Wagyu, they have animals that are commingled in a herd, and the students get to see, how these animals behave, how they perform, that type of stuff. And so, really, I see my role at the university as being just one to offer exposure to young minds and open minds. Hopefully, the closed minds end up getting fired in a couple days, it seems like, or a week. And so, when I have a willing young mind, I like to try to introduce them to everything we have going on. It's kind of like they set their own limit. you know, if they adventure some, they're going to get more. If they're a little more restricted, well, they get less. I let them kind of make the call there. But that's pretty much what I do. Is I run the cattle for the university, and I just try to create opportunity to people who have a sincere interest in the beef cattle during the time that they're in my proximity. Some of them go on to be in the industry, some don't. Some go off and do other things.